Hello, my name is Sara Callaway, and I've chosen to do my research and my PowerPoint on sleep training, whether specifically on the cried out method and whether or not it works and is helpful for infants. A few definitions to help you understand better. Sleep training is helping babies learn to fall asleep and stay asleep by themselves. Self-soothing is infants' ability to regulate their emotions by themselves, so to be able to control what they're feeling and settle themselves down. And crying it out is a sleep training method where parents ignore purposely the cries of their children to try and help them learn to self-soothe on their own. So there was an interesting survey that was collected for parenting data that talked about the percentage of parenting books that endorse the cry it out method. It was interesting to see how many books from professional or non-professional opinions thought that the cry it out method was helpful and those that did not endorse it. And there were significantly more that endorsed it. So as you can see here, 61% of parenting books will endorse or encourage the cried out method for infants sleeping, and then 31% will not endorse it, where 8% don't really give a position on it. So why is this? I think that a big reason for the majority of people to endorse the cried out method is because of past and present held beliefs that have kind of stuck with us. And one way that you do the opposite of the cried out method is co-sleeping, which used to be thought of as increasing the child's chance of being sick, not super helpful. So that's one reason where as they're further away, it's easier to do the cried out method. Another one is that there was a belief that holding an infant too much could cause them to become spoiled, have problematic behavior in the future. And then the third one was that it would hinder the ability to self-soothe. So children wouldn't learn to calm themselves if parents were very responsive to their cries. So a few arguments for the cry it out method. One of the biggest one, I think, is that it's better sleep for parents. When parents are tired, it's harder to parent well. I think we've all experienced that, where as we get less sleep, sometimes we feel that we have less control over our emotions, maybe less patience. And it was shown in studies done that as moms were sleepier, they were in some ways poorer parents at bedtime because they weren't able to regulate their emotions as well. They weren't as available for their children. Less sleep could lead to more marital disagreements, which isn't helpful for an infant. And especially if you're really tired, you could definitely be less responsive to the infant's signals for help. If the baby is crying, if the baby is trying to get your attention and you're incredibly tired, you could definitely be less responsive to them. So that's a huge argument for the cried out method, is that if you can sleep, you can be a better parent for your child. And the other one is that those who use the cried out method continually, in general, it was likely to find less infant crying by the time of 3 months. And then there's the other side, which argues more for responsiveness and for care of your child and for being there when they cry. And one reason for this is that crying is the only way an infant can communicate. They don't have the developmental skills or communication skills to reach out in another way when there's something that they need. And as a parent, you are responsible to take care of them and their needs. There are also an argument based on development, where if there's a lack of response, which could be caused by the cry it out method and leaving them be, it could lead to higher cortisol levels, which means that the baby gets stressed, and that can, in long term, affect the brain development and the cognitive function. And the babies do need this social contact to develop their own self-regulation. So, kind of contrary to the previously held belief that you could spoil the child, we know that it's a need for their self-regulation to develop to have that social contact. And it's also been shown that when there's a higher lack of response, there's also less confidence and ability to be independent throughout childhood. So just as a comparison here, there's this argument against responsiveness because one of the easiest way to be responsive is co-sleeping, which means that the baby sleeps with the parent. Many people assume initially that that means the baby has to sleep in the same bed with the parent, which isn't necessarily true. Many of the concerns is that you'll hurt the baby, that you won't have the privacy that you want, that they'll have too much dependence on you. But really, when you look at the findings, co-sleeping infants tend to cry less. They have less stress as they grow up, and it's also been shown that the further your child is away from you at night, the more they cry. So many of the concerns of co-sleeping are addressed by the fact that it doesn't necessarily mean the same bed, but in the same room. When you get down to it with the cry it out method or not doing the cry it out method and the more responsiveness, I think it really comes down to the wants and needs of an infant. Am I spoiling the wants? Am I giving them all that they want so that they'll end up not good with unhealthy behaviors? And really it's about, do infants have wants, or really do they just have needs? When they cry, generally they're seeking for food, they're seeking for a diaper change, they're seeking for comfort. And I think that's the last one where people struggle with. And from the studies, it shows, I think, that emotional security is really more of a need. Parents are meant to respond to an infant's cry. In a bunch of the studies, it said when they were trying not to respond, it was really hard because you're hardwired biologically to respond. Ignoring the child is teaching them that you will not respond or meet their needs, which isn't healthy or helpful for attachment. And it is a need to know that the parents are there, and it's a need to know that their needs will be met. Physical touch is a need. So I think that that's why I lean towards constant responsiveness, is that this is about the needs of the infant, which if we are not to meet, the attachment will not form correctly. Two personal experiences that I think have shaped my ideas about this is, one, that my mom would give us advice about being frustrated with the baby. She's like, if you have done all you can to be responsive, if they've been crying for a long time and you just can't figure out anything that's wrong with them, feel free to put them down for a few minutes and go take a break. You don't want to be angry, you don't want to shake your baby, you want to make sure that your baby is safe, first and foremost. And the doctor's advice to mom was that if a baby is crying for seemingly no reason for a long time, get them completely undressed. And my mom had an experience where a baby was crying for a long time, and she got him completely undressed and found a little hair wrapped around one of his toes, cutting off circulation. And I think this just illustrates the point that babies cry for needs, and we can seek those needs and help them, and we need to be responsive. So in conclusion, with the research that I've done, it's shown that the cried out method in long term isn't helpful for attachment and isn't helpful for the baby to meet their needs in general. So it's more important to be responsive so that they can have healthy attachment and respond to their needs.